Tansi, I'm TR Wheatley, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is the newly elected Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, Kyra Wilson. She is the second woman to hold the position and 9th overall since the organization opened in 1988. Wilson is a member of the Long Plain First Nation in southern Manitoba, where she was also a former chief. She stood on the front lines, being instrumental in the push for Search the Prairie Green landfill for 2 First Nations women from her home community. Wilson holds a master's in social work from the University of Manitoba. She was elected in the first round of a by-election held in January after the late Cathy Merrick passed suddenly in September. Grand Chief, thanks for being here with us today, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Just hours before voting had started, there were some male chiefs that made speeches about the old school club, which had some wondering if one of your 3 male counterparts would get the position. And then you won in the first round with 37 of 61 votes. What was that process like for you?
It was amazing. It was so beautiful being able to talk to all of our leadership, and for them to be able to give me that time to speak with them, to talk about their nations and the issues that need to be addressed within their nations. I was very honored to be able to do that work and to continue on that work.
What are some of your priorities for you and your assembly over the next couple of years?
Well, first and foremost, I want to make sure that the chiefs are able to give me that clear direction in what they want me to accomplish as the Grand Chief for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. So first and foremost, I want to be able to meet with our leadership and make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the direction that we are headed. And we all know the issues. There are many issues that we deal with as First Nations people every single day. So we just need to ensure that we're working and moving together.
And issues, of course, and the big news right now is tariffs. You recently joined the Manitoba-U.S. Trade Council. Tell us a bit about that and why having something like this is important.
Well, I just am grateful for our Premier to invite myself and our First Nations leadership to the table. Right now it's a very important discussion, and what does that mean for Manitoba, but also our First Nations communities, our families. And I'm just grateful for that opportunity to be able to sit at that table and to have these discussions about finding solutions and how we're going to deal with those tariffs.
Whenever things hit, whether it be the pandemic or something like tariffs and rising costs, it's First Nations who feel it the most. What do you think could be the impact on First Nations in Manitoba?
Well, we do have to deal with the affordability for food in all of our communities. We are, obviously the first peoples of this land, but we struggle the most with poverty and being able to afford, basic necessities. And I think about our northern communities that, are already dealing with high costs for everything. Even when we look at food, the affordability for our northern communities is something that I think about when we talk about the tariffs and what does that mean for all First Nations, but the inflation that we are going to see with these tariffs, that is something that I am working on and I will be working on with our leadership to find solutions.
How can First Nations be better prepared to weather storms like a big jump in the prices of goods?
Well, I believe that we need to support each other. If entrepreneurs, businesses, whether it's Indigenous, First Nations owned, we need to support each other in that way. So look at local businesses and how we can support one another locally, but also looking within Canada and supporting our businesses across this country. There are a number of different other skills that we can learn over the next little while. I know for myself, when I was in office in my community as chief, we looked at having a greenhouse, and we looked at gardening, and some of these different skills that we can acquire over time. And it's not something that happens overnight, of course, but as long as we are working together to find solutions, even the smallest solution can have a big impact.
Another hot topic right now, Jordan's principle. AMC had signs up saying there was no more funding available recently. You've just got into this position for a few weeks now, but what's that situation like there?
Well, Jordan's principle is a ruling. I don't see Jordan's principle funding going away. I know that there have been discussions about removing the back to basics, and back to basics, included a number of different things, food security, housing. There was a number of different requests that were approved under back to basics, and my understanding, and I haven't received this in writing yet, but I will be ensuring that I do get something for our leadership, but also for our communities, that I do believe that there is going to be a decrease in funding. But what I do understand right now is we can't have that funding completely cut, because we still do have a ruling, and we still have children that have medical needs that need to be supported.
And it's, like I said, it's a hot topic. There's controversy. There's many stories coming out now about some ways the funds were used. Some including Jordan River Anderson's own father saying, funds have been misused for things like ATVs, hockey equipment, model headshots. What's your take on this?
Well, first and foremost, as leadership, we have been telling the federal government that we have the guidelines, we have the policies, we have the answers. We know what we need to do to provide this service to our communities, to our children. And of course, government is not listening to the very people that are receiving these services. And so now what we see is this big mess. And this is not our fault as First Nations. I believe when government is developing services for our people, they are not working with us to create these services. And then what you see is actually a mess. And as First Nations, we're expected to clean up that mess. And so that's why we see that right now with the Jordan's Principle funding is we had the answers, government should have listened to us, and now we're expected to fix that mess.
You talked about this a little bit earlier. This isn't your first leadership role. You were the chief in Long Plain First Nation. What did you learn there, and how is it helping you with transitioning into this bigger role?
Being a chief is one of the hardest jobs that I've ever had. There is so much demand every single day. You are caring for your community, and in my case, I was caring for a nation of 5,000 people, and you're caring for your own family, and then if you have time, you're caring for yourself. And all too often, chiefs, counselors, they don't have time for themselves, and that is something that I don't think that everyone realizes, that the demand to be a chief or a counselor, to be a leader in your community, is so much work, and all too often our own needs are set aside, and sometimes that can be unhealthy if we're not supporting our leadership, and we're not uplifting our leadership, and we're not giving them the credit that they deserve.
Yeah, sometimes we're our own worst critics to each other. You also work closely with the late Grand Chief Cathy Merrick, including on the front lines to push to search the Prairie Green landfill over 2 years ago. Now that search is underway now, but getting it was a long process. Can you share with us through your eyes what that was like?
Yeah, I actually remember the day I received a call from Winnipeg Police, and they had shared with me, one of my community members, was a part of, this tragic incident, and the community member could very well be in a landfill, and that was the information that was shared with me. And receiving that call, I, didn't really know what to think at that moment, other than like, this is really sad for our nation, sad for the families. And then maybe 20 minutes later, I received a second phone call from them again, saying that there's a second woman from our community of Long Plain. And when I received that second call, I said, okay, this is obviously something that I need to address. I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. And so speaking with Winnipeg Police, speaking with the families, we knew that we needed to make sure that we brought these women home. And initially we received the answer of, no, we're not going to search the landfill. And so I needed to step up, I needed to advocate, and I was getting pulled in so many different directions. I needed to support the nation, I needed to support the family, I needed to speak with media, I was still governing the nation and the day-to-day, and so I was getting pulled in so many different directions. And so I had reached out to the late Grand Chief, and I said, Grand Chief, can you please support me in this fight that I know that I'm gonna have to deal with for the next little while? And she didn't hesitate. She was ready to support me, and walking along that journey with her in that fight, along with the families, it was, even though it was a very difficult thing to hear and to deal with, it was still very beautiful to be able to walk that journey with her.
And Grand Chief, what I find interesting or humbling maybe, or even both, is that the women the searchers were looking for are from your community, but you're actually related to one of them, and you've always let her immediate family speak on her behalf. And then MMIWG, of course, is a national issue, but it must get difficult as it hits so close to home for you.
Yeah, I always want the families to be up in the forefront, and despite having my own connection and relation to one of the women, I just felt like I needed to have the immediate family present and in the forefront when we were having these discussions. And at that time, I didn't really feel like it was about me and what I needed for myself. It was about the families and what they needed. And that was always, in the back of my mind, is how do I support the families? And that's what I did, every single day when we were fighting that fight.
There's so much more to talk about here on Face to Face with Kyra Wilson. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Manitoba's second female in the Grand Chief seat. There's that debate out there that some organizations like AMC, like AFN, have become irrelevant as more communities are beginning to take care of their own affairs. What would you say to those people?
Well, the organizations, we're there to support our communities. We're there to support our leadership, and that's always the priority. Whatever it is that the leadership are needing to ensure that they have all the services and supports in their community for their nations, that is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Let's change gears here a bit. Your education is in social work and child welfare. Tell us a bit about why you saw the need to first get post-secondary education, but more specifically in this field.
Well, when I think about that journey, I actually wanted to become an interior designer, and And then my auntie came home, or came to my house, sorry, one day, and I was with my daughter. I was a new mom at the time, and she said, "Kyra, you need to become a social worker." And she said, there are so many First Nations children in the child welfare system, and we need more First Nations people in the system to support our families, support our children. So I really wanted to become an expert on how to protect not only my family, but all First Nations families.
You know, I'm going to age us both here, but I want to take us back to the late 2000s. I remember interviewing you as a student about the 2% cap on First Nations education. You know, that's one of the first political stances publicly that I heard you take. Do you remember your stance and why you felt so strongly to speak up at that time?
I'm like, no, I don't remember, no. Yeah, I do remember the work as a student, as a university student. There were so many various issues that we were talking about post-secondary. We were, you know, part of that whole I Don't Know More movement. There were so many different discussions taking place, and, you know, it was such a great time for me and my introduction into not only politics, but policy development, education, law creation. You know, it really opened my eyes to, you know, all the different issues that we face as First Nations people, and you know, I just appreciated that time.
Yeah, you know, in 2016, you ran in the provincial election for the Manitoba Liberal Party. What compelled you to run provincially at that time?
Wow, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just smiling because I'm just thinking back all this work that you know, I was able to be a part of. And so when I think about the 2016 provincial election, at that time, I worked with one of our former Grand Chiefs, and you know, under his guidance and direction, we were able to establish the First Nations Family Advocate Office. And so at that time, you know, I was doing that work for our First Nations families and advocating for them in the child welfare system. And just thinking back at the time, it was a crisis for our families. And I really wanted to step up and do something different. And at that time, you know, I said, I will run, but I will only run if I can run against the Minister of Child and Family Services at that time. And I know it's not all the system is not because of one person in particular. I know it's the system, but at that time, that was something that I wanted to do for our families that were you know, involved with the child welfare system.
You know, speaking of advocating, in recent months, APTN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nipanak has called for a national inquiry into policing. You know, since August, APTN has confirmed 13 Indigenous people have died while interacting with police. And there are more and more social media videos being posted online involving police altercations. What's your stance on this issue?
Since being elected, and I have actually had conversations with 4 different communities or 4 different nations in this region regarding our CMP and the I guess the interactions and maybe the lack of respect. There's so many things I can call it, but right now there is a crisis.
Let's talk truth and reconciliation for a minute. Would you say those are buzzwords, or do you think people are doing their part, or what else should be done considering there are still naysayers and denialists out there?
Well, I believe that there are many people that believe the term truth and reconciliation. I also believe that it is a certain level of understanding, and if you don't maybe live it every day, you don't see it, you don't hear it, you may not fully understand what it means to be First Nations, and that's okay. You know, that's something that we work on every single day, is try to, you know, speak with our allies, non-Indigenous communities, and speaking about, the hardships that we deal with every single day, because there are so many barriers that we still deal with as First Nations people. We still are, under the Indian Act, and that in itself is an oppressive legislation that, does put up barriers for us every single day. If we didn't have these barriers in place, we would be able to take care of our own nations without any government involvement. Like, we would not need anyone other than our own families in our nations. And that's what we need to do, is we need to remove all these oppressive policies that we deal with every single day as First Nations people.
We've got to step aside for a quick break, but stick around. More to come with Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kyra Wilson.
Thank you. I will make you proud. I will do the best that I can to bring forward our issues. I know there's many issues, but we will tackle every single one, no matter what it takes.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Manitoba's top chief, Kyra Wilson. We've talked a lot about your role, but tell us a little bit about Kyra and your home life.
Yeah, family is the most important piece in my life, I guess you could say. There's always been this one teaching that was shared with me, and that was always to take care of your home fire. And of course, that means taking care of your family first and foremost. I have my partner and my daughter and my siblings. And of course, my mom. My mom has always been an amazing support to me in everything that I do. And, I just love my family and the support and also the sacrifice that they've had, in the last few years, actually, in being in various leadership roles. I know that it can be taxing on families when you have a family member that is in leadership. But also just thinking too about, my loved ones that have passed on, and my ancestors that are walking with me every single day. And so I just think about my family and how they're the most important part of my life.
I just have to ask, you have a lot of nice artwork, Indigenous tattoos. Tell me a little bit about them.
Actually, I didn't get any tattoos until I was probably about 28. And for me, when I think about art can come in many different ways. And even for myself, I'm actually an art collector at home. My whole house is covered in artwork, like canvas artwork from First Nations, Indigenous artists. And so when I think about, the tattoos that I have on my body, I just think of the artists and the work that it takes to create that art. And it's very therapeutic for me as well. When you think about that mindfulness and being in the present moment, that is exactly what happens for me when I get a tattoo. It's therapy. It's therapy for me.
Last question here. Any advice to anybody who's looking to maybe, dabble in politics or just, on their life path?
Well, when you find your passion, when you know what you love, and you might not know what you love to do today, you may not know what that is tomorrow, but what I say is continue thinking about what is your passion, because when you find out what you're passionate about and you enter into that space in terms of education and career, and you are working in that space of being passionate about the work, it doesn't feel like work. It feels just so beautiful to be able to do that work.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to thank you for your time. That is all the time we have for Face to Face this week. You can always catch up on any episodes you may have missed, check our website, aptnnews.ca, or visit our APTN News page on YouTube. All face-to-face episodes are available as podcasts, including this one. You can find those wherever you choose to download audio from. Thank you for tuning in. I'm TR Wheatley. Dennis Ward will be back in the seat in 7 days. Egasani.